Have you ever wondered why the rich get richer and others don't? Could it be that a small percentage of the population pay others to find, study, and execute on legal loopholes that exist with our financial life and make it easier for them to prosper? The answer is a resounding yes. This is the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. John has spent a lifetime researching and mastering the financial loopholes that he believes should be available to everyone. Join us as we explore different strategies that help you get farther faster towards building and enjoying a prosperous retirement.
Hello and welcome to the Secrets of the Wealthy with John Mintz. John, good afternoon. How are you doing?
Hey, Eric. I am just doing great as always. I'm really excited about today because I felt like I left people a little bit on a down note on the last go-round, and I promised them, if you haven't already listened to that episode, I do encourage you to do so because it leads into this one, but I promised folks I would leave them in a more encouraging light today, and I plan on doing that.
Yeah, it was a bit of a cliffhanger last time. It's basically a two-part series about the perfect storm. Perfect storm being two items that are kind of converging at the same time. John spoke about the expanding stock market bubble and what his thoughts are, and gave us some data and great factual information about historical things that have happened in the market to kind of back up his thoughts. And then the other storm that he brought up was the U.S. national debt, which we all know. It's not a good thing. It's pretty doggone big. It's like a big, hairy, audacious beast silently standing in the corner staring at us. I think is the way I want to describe that. But in describing those things, in putting those two things in perspective and how they're interacting, in defining the problem, now John has brought it to today, which is kind of the solutions to individual issues, whether it's taxes or their own personal debt, and he's promised to bring up some good solutions for us today. So I am excited as well, John. Where do we start with today's podcast?
Well, I'm sitting here while you're talking, I was kind of giggling a little bit because when I meet with folks individually, the first appointment is a working appointment. It's really fact-finding and figuring out, okay, what is our math problems? And then I tell them at the end, okay, for every math problem, there's a math solution. So next time is going to be what I call the fun appointment. So today is the fun show.
All right.
And we're going to have fun because we can realize that, we do have this daunting problem in front of us as it relates to taxes increasing, but there's solutions and there's ways to deal with it, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I think the best way to start with that is the question, what can be done, right? And so the first thing I think about that is when I talk about this with folks, I say, well, first we need to talk about how you think, because if I know how you think, I know where you're going to be in 5 years, good, bad, or indifferent, at least as it relates to finances. And so I ask them, how do you think about saving? So in particular, as it relates to these tax-deferred vehicles like 401ks and IRAs, do we think about saving for 1 year, or do we think about saving for the long term? And they always say, well, of course I think about saving for the long term in my 401k. Okay, well, then how do we think about reducing taxes? Or how do we think about taxes in general? Do we think about reducing taxes for this year? And the answer is, well, yeah, pretty much. When I meet with my accountant, that's what we're trying to do this year and next year. And I said, well, shouldn't we be thinking about saving taxes for a lifetime just like we do for savings? And the light bulb, kind of clicks on. They're like, oh, yeah, but I just don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to break down what I call a micro versus a macro approach to taxes. Now, not just in general, I'm going to throw math at some people today, and I don't want some people to turn off the podcast because they heard the word math, right? Because I'm going to make it fun. I promised you that. And I'm definitely going to make it enlightening. But we know what we know for a fact, okay, is taxes are going up. So if we take a micro approach to that, our goal would be to, what do I have to do to reduce taxes this year? Whereas a macro approach is, what do we do to reduce taxes over a lifetime? So that's the approach we're going to take here today. Anyway, I'm going to get into some examples, some actual examples on that today, Eric. But have you ever seen this or anything like this where you've seen me compare or someone compare what a taxes might be for an individual in retirement on their 401k or IRA accounts? Have you ever personally seen anything like that?
No, not in depth by any means.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to do this. I do this in Pertin, usually with graphs and charts. I'm going to attempt, and we'll see if I'm successful or not, but I'm going to attempt to paint this picture in people's mind today in a way such that they get it. And so I'm going to start with a 64-year-old male.
Okay.
All right. And we're going to assume that this guy's in a 25% tax liability. We're going to assume he has a $500,000 IRA. And we're also going to assume that he's going to get a 5% annual growth on his IRA. Then we're also going to assume that he's going to live to age 90, and that's going to be the year that he dies. And lastly, we know that he's going to have to take out RMDs, those required minimum distributions, that the government forces our money out. We're going to know that he's going to have to do that between ages 72 and 90. So what we're going to attempt to do here is figure out how much in taxes is he going to pay based on those numbers that I just gave you. How much is he going to pay in taxes from now through age 90 on his $500,000 account? Now, this is assuming no tax increases, that he's just going to be in this 25% tax bracket for the rest of life. Well, John, that's not realistic. No, it's not. But we're going to do it anyway because I'm going to prove a point today with it, okay?
All right. So
if we run the numbers, the taxes that he would pay on his RMDs alone at withdrawal I'm going to round off, would be $204,000. The taxes now, when those RMDs come out, he doesn't need the money, remember, so he's going to reinvest those monies that are forced out of there. He has to pay taxes on them. We just gave you that number. And then he's going to reinvest that money and pay taxes on the growth of that account. That's another $96,000. Then the taxes he's going to owe at death on the remaining value of that account is another $156,000. So are you ready? Here's the total taxes he's going to pay on the original $500,000 he started with. $456,000.
Gee, Merry Christmas. I thought this was a good news podcast, man.
Yeah, it is. That's taxes not. Hey, okay, I lied, didn't I? That's taxes not increasing. Hang with me. The good news is coming.
Okay.
Eric. Thanks, Eric, for bursting my bubble. But yeah, okay, the good news is coming. I promise, folks. So I had to do this so we can do a comparison here. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So that's without taxes increasing. Now, what if that money was in a Roth IRA instead? Okay. What if I only had to pay taxes? If you were a farmer in West Texas and I asked you, well, would you rather pay, let's say you're growing watermelon, would you rather pay taxes on the seed or would you rather pay taxes on the harvest? And of course you say, well, of course I'd rather pay it on the seed. Mm-hmm. And that's what a Roth IRA does. We're going to pay taxes first, then we invest the money after tax and never pay taxes again. And so there's a number of different reasons why a Roth is so valuable. It just fathoms my mind, Eric, that only 9% of assets in IRAs are actually in a Roth. It blows my mind. I just don't get it. So that in and of itself, if you ask most people, do they know what a Roth is? They've at least heard of one. Mm-hmm. But why is it that tends to be, obviously the statistics say that's a secret of the wealthy, because it must be a secret because 91% of the population isn't using it. So I don't understand that, but I am on a mission to change that number personally and get more people using it. And why is that? Well, the differences between a Roth and other things is significant, especially in the long term. And I'm going to prove that today by going through some numbers. But I'm going to use that same guy who's 64-year-old with all the same numbers. Okay, and I'm going to go through some numbers with you, and we're going to talk about the difference there. But first, before we do that, I want to talk about the marginal, what I call the marginal tax bracket. All right, now, the marginal tax bracket is the top tax bracket. So, Eric, if you had to guess, and we haven't had this conversation, so this will be a good test, and I ask this question a lot. If you had to guess, taking the top bracket, the top tax bracket, going back to the creation of income taxes in the early 1900s, all the way to today, what would you say is the highest that highest tax bracket rate ever reached?
Well, if I had to guess, I'd say 60%.
Okay. That's actually a little higher than what most people guess.
Really?
And it's really low, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
So it actually got as high as 94%.
What?
Yep. And it stayed there, close to that. It stayed above 90% for a better part of, 20 years.
Wow.
And starting in the early 1940s, after, our world wars, we were trying to pay for those World War I, World War II, we were trying to pay for that. Now, people say, yeah, but you had to make a lot of money back then to be in that bracket. Oh, really? 200,000? And the story goes, I don't know if you know that, have heard this story, but Ronald Reagan, who was an actor in California, I lived in California, he was an actor at that time, and he'd only do one, maybe two movies. The reason is because he'd hit 200,000, paid 94%, anything over 200,000, he would have paid 94% of his income to the federal, and then the other 6% went to the state of California, so he'd have been working for free. So he just didn't do any more movies. So, and of course, when he took over office, he was a demon as it relates to lowering taxes. Right now, you know why.
Yeah.
But that's the history of taxation. I mean, for the better part of 50 years, going all the way to the mid-'80s, the highest tax bracket was above 50%. 50 years. Okay,
Wow.
That's U.S. tax income history. And so, again, we have short memories. We tend to have amnesia as Americans, right? But history has a way of repeating itself, and we need to be ready for that when it happens. So let's go back to that 64-year-old again. Do you remember the numbers we just went through on how much he would pay with no tax increases?
It was like 460,000 or something like that. It was crazy.
468. That's right.
Oof.
So now we're going to take the same 500,000, same guy, same tax, okay, 25% straight through death, same rate of growth, 5%, and have him live to age 90. But this time, we're going to convert his IRAs and his 401ks. We're going to convert those to a Roth IRA. And the taxes he's going to pay on that Roth is going to be $125,000. All right? The taxes he's going to pay on the growth. Oh, by the way, now his money doesn't get forced out via RMDs, by the way. But if he decides to choose it anyways and take it out, it's no big deal. So the growth taxes he's going to pay is zero. The taxes he's going to pay at death on the remaining value, zero. The total taxes he's going to pay is $125,000 versus $468,000.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
So
that's the good news.
Yeah.
Thank you. I knew you were coming with it.
Hey, it gets better. It gets better. So now we have to say, and I want to remind folks, okay, that all of this is backed up. Sometimes I give folks, I run an analysis for them actually, just on their actual individual account. They bring me their statement. They say, okay, here's my 401k. How much taxes am I going to pay? And I run the report. We have software that does this for them. And some folks say, well, how accurate is this? And I say, well, how about you take it to your accountant and have him pick holes at it. See if he can find a hole. When they come back, they say, nope, my accountant looked at it. It looks good to me. But, I am not an accountant. This is not accounting advice, but it's math. And we have software that does this for us. But so now we have this path. We have two paths we can choose, right? We can go left, and the micro approach, which is pay $460,000 over time, or we can take this macro approach and say we're going to be proactive about this and pay $125,000 instead, right?
Yeah.
And I think most folks, that's the path that they would choose. So, you want the government's plan or what your plan, right? Which one are you going to choose, right?
Yeah, I'll go with my plan, my guy.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me ask you this. In your example, you said, we were going to do it for simple mathematics, that this 64-year-old gentleman, taxes never changed, right? From the beginning to the end of his life at I think it was 90.
Yeah, that's right.
But here's the thing, is that we've had conversations before, and you've even said it on this. I think everybody realizes that because of the national debt, because of all the stimulus, because of all these different things that have happened just in the last few years, I think everyone agrees that taxes are going to go up. So what then?
Oh, they're going up. So the question is how fast and how far, right? And so what do we do if taxes change? No, what do we do when taxes change, right?
Yep.
And so let's talk about that for a minute. So before I was talking to you, when I was asking you a question about how high do you think taxes went as far as the top tax bracket? Well, a lot of folks can't relate to that. They say, I'm never going to be in that top tax bracket. Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. In 1942, the top tax bracket was $2 million. The next year, it was $200,000. So maybe you will. But let's just assume you're in the middle quintile. We call the middle quintile. Another way to say that is that middle tax bracket. Another way to say that is middle class. So in 1998, that tax bracket was 28%. All right? Now, we're just talking about the difference between 1998 and 2018. The difference in 2018 of that same middle tax bracket is 22%. Well, why do I tell you that? Well, to tell you that means that taxes were 30% higher, roughly 30% higher in 1998 than they were in 2018. Well, what significance is that, John? Well, because now I'm going to rerun the numbers for us on that same 64-year-old, assuming that his taxes are going to increase one time, and we're going to do it at the end of 2025 when we know taxes are going to go up for sure, right? So we're going to increase his taxes by 30%. Yes, could they go up a lot more than that? Sure. Could they go up several times between now and age 90? Sure, probably will, but we're just going to do this one increase, this one time, and rerun the numbers before and after and see what we come up with, okay?
All right.
So, just to recap, we got a 64-year-old, 25% tax bracket increasing 30% at the end of 2025, same 500,000, same growth rate of 5%, same RMDs, still going to have him live until age 90. Everything's the same. But now his RMD taxes are $265,000. His reallocated assets growth is $110,000. And the taxes that he's going to pay on the remaining value at death is about $203,000. So adding that number up, remember the number before for this guy was 468, right? Now it's 500. It's $1,000 short of 580,000.
Gee, Merry Christmas.
One small increase, one time, not multiple increases, not a lot, not large increases, multiple times. So I guess I'm giving people these numbers so they understand. We talk about taxes going up, but we really don't understand the gravity as to how it could be a financial perfect storm. Okay, a retirement perfect storm that causes your ship to sink.
Yeah.
In retirement, right? Okay, here's the good news again. So if we take the same 500,000 with taxes going up 30% one time again, I give you one guess as to what the taxes would be on a Roth conversion.
Zip. Oh, no. Well, the original on the conversion will be the same as it was before because taxes haven't gone up yet.
See, this stuff isn't really that hard. Exactly. It's exactly the same, 125,000.
Yeah.
Because we're going to convert it. We've got 5 years to convert it. We're going to convert it during that 5 years. And now we're never going to pay taxes ever again. And so it's still $125,000. So to recap those numbers, we're saying if taxes were to stay the same, they won't. But if they were, you can either pay $450,000 by not converting, or you could pay $125,000 by converting. But if taxes rise slightly, then it's $570,000 versus $125,000. So what is that? Just shy of $450,000 difference.
Yeah.
Between the two routes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So I know this is what you do for a living. So, I mean, this is not a loaded question necessarily, but how does somebody go about building their own plan, building a plan where they can look at these numbers? Is this something that they just absolutely have to work with a professional? Are there resources online? What is your best suggestion?
Well, I'll tell you what not to do again. I always like to tell folks first what not to do, because I share examples that are shared with me with other folks that I work with. So because I learn as much from my clients as they learn from me, I think sometimes. But I did this teaching a couple months ago in a workshop, and then I had this lady, a widow, and she called me, and she said, "John, after your workshop, I called Vanguard." And I asked them what they thought about this idea. Now, when you call Vanguard, you're calling a 1-800 number, and you're talking to, any Joe Schmo that answers, right? So she said, I talked to them, and they said, well, ma'am, you would never want to do that, talking about Roth conversion. You would never want to do that because that's going to instantly put you into a higher tax bracket. I said, okay, that's interesting. Let me ask you something. What tax bracket did he tell you were going to be going from and to? Oh, well, we didn't talk about that. Yeah. I said, so he didn't analyze your current tax bracket, how much you'd be converting, and why that would put you in a different tax bracket?
Yeah.
well, no. I said, so really he made a statement based on nothing. Facts. Nothing. Correct? She said, well, I guess. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. So I said, that's why I tell people, don't believe what I say. Believe the math.
Yeah.
Because and then even when I show you the math, take it to your accountant and show him too. Because if the math doesn't lie and your accountant validates it, then it's got to be right. But don't believe what you hear. So that's what not to do, Eric. Okay.
Yeah.
So what they can do is this. If you were able to see what it was that I was sharing with you today, you would see that there's a ton of math behind all those numbers. You would see it every single year, and those RMDs coming out. You see every single year the tax and everything. But what we can do, what we have folks do, is we just say, hey, you can simply bring in a statement to us, 401k statement, an IRA statement, whatever it might be. You can bring that in, and within 10 to 15 minutes, we can actually do an analysis like you heard about today and give you what we call your total tax burden. Some people would call it your total tax debt, because you have a debt to the IRS in the form of taxes that you haven't paid yet, right? And so we can do that analysis. We can show them what their debt and their burden is. And sometimes it's pretty daunting. I had a guy the other day, and he had a $1.4 million 401k. It was 90% of his retirement. And we ran his numbers, and it came out to close to $1.8 million in taxes he will pay on that $1.4 million.
Gee, wow.
And he said, yeah, he said, John, I never thought this would ever happen to me. I don't know how I got here. Just tell me what we need to do to fix this. So that's the first thing we can do. Then the second thing we can do, because we don't want to just leave them with the problem, right, is then we can do a Roth conversion analysis to show them not only how much less they can pay, right, which on a $1.4 million, 25% of that you can do the math. It's a much smaller number than 1.8 million. But we can do an analysis on that for folks as well, but go a step further and show them exactly how they can do that in a way such that it doesn't put them into higher tax bracket, and they can capitalize on the lower taxes that we have now, at least for the next 5 years, right? If they don't change something on us sooner, versus waiting till when we know taxes are going to be higher.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we absolutely can run those analysis for folks. It doesn't take long at all. We just need a statement in front of us to be able to do that. It's a lot of enjoyment by helping people realize, what they've got ahead of them, but more importantly, how to fix it.
Yeah. And you did mention that they could just bring in a statement, but you also meet people virtually, correct?
Yeah, we absolutely do. We're finding people are wanting to get out and about again now more than they did for a while. And that's nice. It's nice to see people's faces and have some banter with them that way. But absolutely, we have clients that, and I think last check we have clients in 17 states now. I've lost count, but a lot of folks we've never even met in person because we have folks that have been with us for 10 years, and they say, hey, my brother-in-law who's out in Tennessee has the same problem I have. Would you talk to him? Well, sure. Birds of a feather flock together. And so we get on a virtual call with them, and we do all the same analysis that we would do right in person. So absolutely.
Perfect. All right. So then how can somebody set that up, whether it's going to be in person or virtual? How do they set something like this up?
Well, there's a few different ways. They can go to our brand new website that was just released recently, and that's biltmore-financial.com, and they can connect with us through that website, and that's biltmore-financial.com, or they can call us directly, and my staff is ready and waiting, 817-225-6260, and they'll talk to my staff and be able to organize and get on my calendar to be able to meet with them and do an analysis that way as well.
John, I love the fact that you brought us good news, but I think I appreciate even more the fact that you're willing to bring us the news that we don't necessarily want to hear but need to. You're willing to say those things. You're willing to discuss the harder topics like you did on the first podcast and a little bit on this one to bring us just truth. So, John, thank you so much for your time today and the education that you're bringing to the audience.
It's been a real pleasure, Eric, and I always enjoy these, and I look forward to the next one, my friend.
Absolutely. And our last thank you, of course, goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when John comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you for listening today. For everyone at the Secrets of the Wealthy, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of John Mintz. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.